Yeah. But I would put that in collaboration modes. But okay, that depends on what you call it, because if management doesn't support this kind of new ways of working, okay. So what should I add? What should we add here? Yeah, okay. So also there's a need for new attitudes. Absolutely. The narrow definition of entrepreneurship is around what we have here. Employing oneself, starting a company, and developing that company. Business development. That's the narrow definition. The wide definition is about acting on opportunities to create value. And not only financial value, but also cultural value, societal value, environmental value. And that needs creativity, action, and self-confidence. And this is a way to prepare individuals for a more uncertain world and future. This is a common way to put it in literature, at least in educational literature. Not so much in entrepreneurship literature. But when you talk about entrepreneurship education, this is a common way to split it up. And whenever I go out and talk, I have to start here. Because most people, when I talk entrepreneurship, they think that I mean the financial focus. They don't think that I mean the personal development focus. And they think I'm talking about creating new organizations. But I'm talking about creating value for other people. And it doesn't even have to be people. It can be animals. And they don't even have to be alive. They can be dead. I have a kid in my street where I live. He found a dead bird in the garden. And he gave this bird a worthy funeral. That was also value creation. And I don't think that bird had a company. You know? He didn't invoice that bird. So you don't have to work with, financial structures and money in order to create value to others. Okay? So what are the entrepreneurial competencies? Well, a common way to split competencies up is into knowledge, skills, and attitudes. When it comes to knowledge, it could be mental models, it could be declarative knowledge, facts, this is how it is. When it comes to skill, it could be marketing, strategy, resource acquisition, identifying opportunities, learning skills, and interpersonal skills. And these skills here, they also work with a wide definition. I'm not starting a company right now, but I'm still marketing my ideas that I have developed throughout a couple of years here. So I'm doing it in order to try to create some kind of value. You see my point? Whenever you're sitting in a meeting, you often end up in having a need to market your own idea of how things should be solved. That you could say could be labeled an entrepreneurial skill. When it comes to attitudes, the most common attitudes people talk about is entrepreneurial passion. I want to work entrepreneurially. Entrepreneurial self-efficacy, which is basically self-confidence, but more narrow. I feel confident that I can act entrepreneurially. Identity, entrepreneurial identity. I feel like an entrepreneurial person. I am an entrepreneurial person. Proactiveness, perseverance to continue despite difficulties, and uncertainty tolerance. We humans get anxious when we don't know what is going to happen. That's why I told you what I'm going to talk about today, to lower your anxiety. But when you work entrepreneurially, you have to accept that there are certain things that you don't know. And you can train that competency. in managing uncertainty and ambiguity. This is how OECD writes about this. The skills in question include qualities such as habit of learning, curiosity, creativity, initiative, teamwork, personal responsibility. But all these are nice words, really beautiful words, but how do you act on them? Sometimes I get the feeling that there are so many nice words and desirable words that are connected to entrepreneurship, but nobody is talking about how are we going to make that happen. I think that's a challenge in this area. Comments? Thoughts? Is this all, you already knew this, or is this slightly new or completely surprise to you? Yes? Yeah? Maybe if we look at the next picture, because that's how it looks in the Swedish school today, more or less, or in many schools. That we start with a wide definition, and then it becomes more and more narrow. But your question was about the tests.
No, my question is about the if you have any program that goes through all the ages of the student, and you work specifically these active use, values, or whatever you call it.
I would say no.
For teachers or people who's going to work with students, like in Norway. They have entrepreneurship courses, and I think it's mandatory for teachers before they get their teacher's idea.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, this area is in a very, very early stage. People are experimenting. Very few people know how to do it, and then you have some anecdotal islands of things that seem to work. That is what I would say. So it's a challenging thing to work with for everybody. Yeah. Hmm? Okay, so this is a way to try to visualize what it looks like with entrepreneurship in the educational system. In the early years, you work with you often find a pretty wide definition. It's practice oriented. It's educating through entrepreneurship instead of about entrepreneurship. The purpose is to make people more entrepreneurial, not to make them entrepreneurs. And then when you progress up here through secondary school, higher education, and when you end up where I am at the university, it's the most narrow definition being used. How to become an entrepreneur. How do entrepreneurs work? How do you start a company? And then it gets a bit wider here, and when you're up in work life, it's like quite wide again when it comes to, for example, growth programs for business owners. So this is a simplification, but it's a way to see how it looks if you generalize in the educational system. And on the left side, it's called enterprise education, at least in the United Kingdom. And on the right side, it's called entrepreneurship education. That's why I use the term entrepreneurial education, because that takes both of those ends into it. In Sweden, we call it entrepreneurial learning. But in other countries, entrepreneurial learning is how entrepreneurs learn. So I prefer not to use that term because it could be confusing. Much of the research on entrepreneurial learning is following entrepreneurs as they are building their companies and trying to understand how they learn in that process. You could call it entrepreneurial learning in education. And sometimes some people call it enterprise and entrepreneurship education. But those are pretty long terms, and then you lose some people on the way. Okay, so why is this not so common in education? Well, this area of education has problems with here I'm a bit dramatic. I call it the battle of education, but it's actually something that this kind of words is used also by researchers. On the left side, we have the traditional test-focused direct instruction. In Swedish, that's katederundervisning. On the right side, we have real-life-based project work. Some call that, in Swedish, flumskola. And then, you know, they are battling here. You are wrong. No, you are wrong. No, you should come over to our island. No, your island should be sinking into the sea, and so on. On the left side, you have a theory focus. On the right side, you have a practice focus. The left side is more predictable than the right side. On the left side, it's focused on knowledge acquisition. On the right side, it's focused on value creation. The left side is often accused of being a passive way of teaching or passive way of learning. And the right side, they say that they are active. And here, it's easy to measure. And over here, it's difficult to measure. And who do you think researchers consider being the winner here today, so far? The left, yes. Yeah. Since about 100 years, they have won this battle. But many in my area, they say that education should go through a paradigm shift from the left side to the right side. But I don't agree. I don't think that ever will happen. And I don't think that this is bad and this is good. I think we need to try to combine the best of traditional and progressive education. That's not an easy thing to do, but I think that is the challenge we need to take on, not winning over the other side, whichever side we are on. And I think entrepreneurship can contribute with this in certain ways. It can contribute with methods of interacting with the outside world. It can contribute with a learning approach that I call learning by creating value. It can contribute with a question, for whom is this knowledge valuable today? Perhaps entrepreneurship can contribute with a third way in education. That's a bold statement, but I think it's not unwarranted. I've written an article on this that you can find on my blog if you want to read more about this. And in that article you will find this very intense picture. I will not go through it. But what it shows is that the debate of entrepreneurial education versus traditional education is actually set in a much, much bigger frame of discussion between traditional education and progressive education or constructivist education, between positivism and interpretivism. So this is theory of science we are ending in here. Do we know what is true, or do we only have the perception of people? Is there one single truth, or is there one way of looking at it for every person that exists? This is where we end up. And then we have a discussion around scientific method versus entrepreneurial method. So this is pretty messed up, don't you think? One thing you could say about entrepreneurship, when you try to make education more entrepreneurial, it will become more complex. So if we want to advocate entrepreneurship in education, we need to find ways to make it more simple to actually manage. When it becomes social, we need to try to find some way to individualize it so that we can manage this from an educational point of view. The process that we always want to focus on has to have content in it. Otherwise, we will not get this to work. And so on. Today, we have, on the left side, we often find politicians and the PISA people at OECD. On the right side, we often find teachers and researchers. And that's not me saying, it's other researchers saying that this is the case. I don't say, I mean, this is a generalization. And there are some OECD people that are on this side. I'm actually writing a report for OECD that is not so much the left side here. So there are different perspectives also in a large organization like OECD. And also among politicians, of course. Yes?
Why do you think that so many politicians are on the left side?
I think it is because we people want to measure things. There is a natural tendency for humans to try to find the concrete, the measurable. It's called reification in English. I don't even know what that means in Swedish, but it's the will to make things like objects. And that is a natural tendency among people, and politicians try to capture what people want because that's their job. So they end up in communicating things that people think sound nice. So I think that's one reason. We really want to believe that you can measure everything, so therefore we go for that.
What about researchers on the right side?
And what about them?
Same question, why are they on the right side? Teachers, what makes them more on the right side?
For the audience on the web, the question was, why are teachers on the right side? Researchers, sorry.
Why do they tend to be on the right side?
Now I'm risking of being very prejudiced. So you have to take my answer with some grain of salt, but maybe it could be because researchers, they look at what teachers do and what happens in the classroom, and there they see other things perhaps than what people see on a higher level. I also would say that researchers are more trained when it comes to philosophy of science. When you do research on social science, you have to have a more constructivist attitude, because otherwise it's not really so easy to get by otherwise. So, but it's a difficult question. I mean, I was surprised myself when I saw this. This is from an article that's not here now. That was talking about this battle. Why did teachers and researchers end up on the losing side? I mean, how can that happen? They don't have the measurability. They don't have the claims. They don't have the evidence, so to speak, that the others have. But maybe also, I mean, you have to make it manageable. And if you manage a large organization, you go for the methods that seem to work. And the politician's job is to get it to at least work in one way or another. So yeah, it's not so easy. Here are some quotes. I mean, there are researchers on the left side too. Slavin is one of them. Yeah, absolutely. This is just a generalization. So on the left side, Slavin writes that a focus on rigorous experiments, evaluating replicable programs and practices, is essential to build confidence in educational research. among policymakers and educators. This specific article got many, many other articles as a response. Here's from one of them. The danger is that we end up valuing what is measured rather than that we engage in measurement of what we value. And that is more or less where we are today. We value what can be measured. And since it's so difficult to measure entrepreneurial competencies, what happens with them? They are devalued. Yeah, the PISA, a couple of weeks ago, there came a letter from 100 educational academics. It was sent to OECD, and they were saying the new PISA regime actually harms our children and impoverishes our classrooms. I don't say that, I mean, I'm just showing you these two sides. I have an opinion, but that's not the point here. You see what I mean? So what do we do about it? That's the topic of this afternoon. My view on this is that if people do what can be measured, we need to find new ways to measure what we believe is important. We cannot just sit there, oh, they are so mean and we don't like it. We have to then try to find ways to measure this that are credible, that can be trusted to some extent. The other side will not do that. So if we believe in entrepreneurial competencies, we are right now on the losing side, and it's up to us to change that. Yes? One more question? Yes?
I'm thinking about what you say about measurements. Measurement, it's hard to measure entrepreneurial learning, entrepreneurial competences. But an entrepreneurial competences is for making value, financial, social, cultural value. On the other hand, when you measure something that is not entrepreneurial, what do they measure? If that's competences that don't create value, what do these competences that you can measure, what do they make, if not value?
I would say that the further down you get in this table here, the more difficult it becomes to measure. Knowledge is pretty easy to measure. When it comes to skills, it becomes slightly more difficult. It depends on which skills we are talking about. When it comes to attitude, it's really, really difficult. Well, there are psychological constructs to measure attitudes such as self-efficacy and so on. I just don't think it's so productive.
Wait.
Thank you, Per. I don't understand why it should be so difficult, because if you let the students work with real life practices, with the outdoor life, outside the school or wherever you are, if you succeed and get what the goal is, and the outdoor life is satisfied what you have done as a student, there is a measure in the cooperation between the school and the outdoor life. Yes. And they decide if I have succeeded or not.
I fully agree.
So I don't understand the problem. If I let my students have authentic practices, I don't have to give so much attention, because the life say self if they have done their work or not. Because there is a company who is waiting on the product or the work, the value, so they can say we can't use it, and then we have to go back and discuss why can't they use it, or why is it so good for them.
Yeah.
So,
but if it's so easy, why is it not widespread?
I don't know. That's why I said I missed something, because
yeah.
I think everything is here.
Yeah. I'm not pessimistic about the future.
Not.
But I'm just looking at the current situation, and we are not very far. But you wanted to comment, Daniela.
Because I agree in theory, but not in practice. Because I think that the time it will take for society to judge, it's too long. Because then they don't have the opportunity to change the situation right now. So then you will have loop times of 10 years. For me, that's the way I see it. Because I look at it from an employability point of view. So if you have a school system and then you measure if people are sort of the right kind of people when they go out from the school system, how can you change it then?
I know what we are being accused of at Chalmers when we do practical work. They call us unacademic. How do I counter such an argument? It's not so easy. I mean, we do, because we still exist, but the School of Entrepreneurship has existed for 17 years. And I would say that 12, 13 of those years have been very, very, under the radar, not showing so many people what we do, because actually this is not really accepted in this kind of system. So what happens many times is that the system kills you. So, yeah. This is a tricky question. But shall we go on? Or, yeah? Where were we? How do we make people more entrepreneurial? I would say that there are very few shortcuts. It doesn't work so well just telling people, be creative, be brave, just do it. Read this book and you will be so entrepreneurial. Or listen to this guy or girl talking. I mean, I will not make you more entrepreneurial by talking here. I don't think that will happen. Many say that the only way is to work with learning by doing. And there's a lot written about learning by doing. But there's very much less written about learning by doing what. What should we let the learners do in order to learn? Should they start a real company? Should they solve a problem? Should they write a business plan? Is that good ideas? Yeah. It's better than nothing. I think today, since maybe 5 to 10 years, there are even better ways to do it than this. And also easier. But that has not existed for so long. So I don't want to say that those that let people start a company or write a business plan are doing something wrong. They were doing the best that we had up until about 10 years ago. Because there has come a new toolbox where the focus is on value creation instead of organization creation. They actually postpone the organization creation as much as they can, because otherwise the focus will be on the organization and not on the value. So they are not doing it because of educational reasons. They are doing it because also entrepreneurs need to focus more on the value they create than on the organization they create. But that is good for education, because we can use these tools in education and not bringing in the organization creation aspect too early, because it makes it so much more complex. You need to register a company, you need to do bookkeeping, you need to do a lot of different things that makes it more complicated to create value. And if you just create value once, you don't have to do anything around organization creation. You don't even have to talk about it. You can hide it. At Chalmers we have created a platform that's built on this together with a Swedish foundation called Drivhuset. I will show you a little bit about that later if there's time for it. It's centered around these modern tools, and they are called Business Model Canvas, NABC, Spin, Effectuation, etc. There's a lot of business words here. I often say that you need to put all those concepts in the washing machine and wash away all the business words, because you don't need those business words when you come early in earlier in the educational system. It just confounds things. People get the wrong idea about what this is, because this is value creation. This is not organization creation. It can turn into business, and if it does, nobody will be unhappy. At least not so many will be unhappy. Some will be, but let's be honest. So why is it so? Why is learning by doing working when so little else is working in making people more entrepreneurial? My explanation that I've come up with in my research is actually that it's the emotional events that do the trick. When we arrange activities that trigger emotional events, that leads to development of entrepreneurial competencies. We can do things as we can ask our students, pupils, to create things, to create value, to create a venture, or to create a sustainable venture that actually will continue after the end of the education. That in turn leads to emotional events. When they start working in teams, which is pretty emotional, they start interacting with the outside world. They realize that they need to work with leadership. They encounter competency gaps that they need to overcome. They have to present to others what they are doing, and so on. They realize that there are individual differences between people. They don't share, everybody doesn't share the same view on things. All of these things trigger emotions, a lot of emotions. Some emotions positive, some emotions negative. And that is a key trigger to developing entrepreneurial competencies. Yes? And in my dissertation, which is also on the blog, so if you really want to read more and more about this, there is a lot to read about it. Then you get these entrepreneurial competencies that I was talking about before. Increased self-efficacy, formation of entrepreneurial identity, increased entrepreneurial passion, increased perseverance. This is what my research has been about. I was inspired by the field of entrepreneurial learning, and then I mean the UK meaning of that. There was a researcher called Jason Cope who did groundbreaking work on entrepreneurial learning. This is what he came up with, an idea that it's the emotional events that trigger entrepreneurial competence development. But he was not in the educational domain. So I took these ideas and brought them into education, and that is what my research has become. So I thank Jason Cope for his groundbreaking work. And I mourn his death. He's not alive anymore. Because that's one of the good things with this work as a researcher. You get to meet the people that actually do the kind of stuff. It's you get really starstruck when you meet a researcher that has written a lot that you have read. You've only seen the name hundreds of times, and then you suddenly meet him. So I would have wanted to meet Jason Cope. This is actually in the afternoon. We will talk about assessment, and this is very difficult to assess. But this column here, the mid column, is much easier to assess. That's exactly what you said before. We can assess the degree of interaction with the outside world. We can assess the presenting in front of others. We can assess the teamwork environment. There are ways to assess the middle part here. So I call that as a proxy for entrepreneurial competencies, which means that if we cannot measure this, we try to measure that instead. But then we have to establish these links very thoroughly. These links here are empirically observed. That is a key. I mean, this is very early work. There's almost no work linking this. I am the first one to do it in this way, at least. And there needs to be more research of that kind if we will be able to trust this. So when the politicians or the administrators say that, when the system comes to kill you, you can drag up some research saying that, but this is not incorrect to measure this, because this leads to entrepreneurial competencies. In the future, maybe that could be a way to survive when the system comes to kill you. Hopefully. Okay, but what about emotions? When I presented this to someone a couple of months ago, he said, Martin, you have to explain that thing about emotions because people don't understand it. What do emotions have with this to do? Is it really relevant? Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced. But it needs an explanation for some people, and it's understandable. Our society has a cognitive bias. Whether we like it or not, emotions we don't talk about. We talk about rationality, facts, and to some extent we talk about actions, but emotions we don't talk about, and we certainly don't measure it. But learning, according to Peter Jarvis, is when the whole person, consisting of body and mind, experiences a social situation where you have cognitive, emotive, and practical aspects involved. Thoughts, actions, and emotions. These are the three main components of the human mind. Thoughts, actions, and emotions. So it's like a three-legged chair. But mostly we only talk about the thought leg, the cognition. That's what we measure, that's what we assess, the thoughts. We don't measure actions, we don't measure emotions. That's a problem. But also an opportunity, because since nobody or very few are measuring actions and emotions, that could be a way forward. There are some researchers who have observed the importance of emotions in education. Bocart writes that emotions have diagnostic value for the teacher because they reveal the learner's underlying cognitions, commitments, and concerns. So following emotions can have a diagnostic value for teachers. I think that's a good way to put it. Hargreaves writes that without attention to emotions, educational reform efforts may ignore and even damage some of the most fundamental aspects of what teachers do. That's pretty harsh words. And I think that happens every day around the world. So more people should read Hargreaves. I once sent an article by Hargreaves to a politician. I didn't get a reply. Yet. And there are more. I mean, from the neuroscience, there is coming increasing evidence of the importance of emotions for people, for us humans. Both the early and late acquired prefrontal damaged patients show that knowledge and reasoning divorced from emotional implications and learning lack meaning and motivation and are of little use in the real world. So we cannot live without the emotions. So how can we teach without them? And Dirk X is leaning on the next slide, which is John Heron. He has done a model on what he calls multimodal learning, where the emotional aspects are the foundation of everything else. The imaginal, the conceptual, and the action forms of learning. So everything you do when you learn is fundamentally leaning on the emotional aspects. That's what Heron says. And here we have emotions, thoughts, and actions, the three domains of the human mind. This is good to remember when we talk education, I think. So how does then learning by doing work? I've done this model. It's in my dissertation, and I'd like to walk you through it. It's inspired and based on the work of a Russian researcher that died almost 100 years ago. Who do you think that is? Vygotsky. I heard it from all over the place here. Yeah. This is based on Vygotsky. So the learner works with other people in a team, and then you get interaction. So the team-based aspect secures that action becomes part of the learning. It becomes a shared activity. And what they do is that they work with some shared rules, processes, tools, knowledge, ideas, and science. This is the words used by Vygotsky. But this is the knowledge cloud, you could say, but not only knowledge, but also other things that we share, that all that humanity share. You could call it culture. So these people draw on this when they work together, and what happens when they do that? Well, nothing. Maybe it's a battery issue. Okay. One thing that happens is what they in this line of research call externalization. You get a designed outcome. You create new rules, processes, tools, knowledge, science, ideas. That's one outcome of such a collaboration. Another outcome, now it works, is internalization, which is deep learning, which we could compare to surface learning, which is happening up here. This is surface learning. So when you start working together and creating things, then you get the deep learning. That is what Vygotsky says, and his colleagues. He had many followers in Russia who have done amazing work that is almost forgotten today. So then you create mental rules, processes, tools, knowledge, science, and ideas when you do this. But there is more to it. If some of these, you could call these artifacts, things that are created by humans. A word often used there is artifacts. But the valuable artifacts become part of the shared culture that we have up here, and will be used by a wider community sometimes. When that happens, we humans get really, really happy. We love it. Because everybody wants love. Everybody wants that other people like what you are doing and what you are contributing with. That is a very basic human need. So when something is used by someone else, it's a drug, and you can get addicted to it. So we have some glossary here: artifact, internalization, externalization. Difficult words, but they are necessary in order to understand what is actually going on here. I call this creation, this part here. When you create something with other people, and you get some kind of an artifact, designed outcome. It could be a report, it could be a product, it could be a piece of art, it could be many things. It could be what we are having here today. Some kind of, we are creating a space, a talking space here today. So we are doing creation here. But are we doing value creation? When you come up to this here, will this be valuable? Let's ask the video people here. Do you think other people will look at this? He nods. He's a very polite video guy. So we don't know that yet. If what we are creating here together will be valuable to others than us. The jury is out on that. And if this value is sustainable, if it's valuable all the time and you want to do it more and more and more, it becomes venture creation, which is sustained value creation. So if I realize that what we do here is so valuable, so we want to do it every day for 5 years, we have to have some kind of a framework around that, because we all have to live some way. Then we would have to create some kind of organization taking care of this. This is the first time we meet, so we'll see if we have an organization in 5 years. Maybe not. And if we now look at the nice words that I talked about before from OECD, let's see if we can find them. We certainly have learning over here. We have surface learning, we have deep learning. Good. Then we can check that off from the OECD. We also have teamwork. because this is shared activity. Yes, so we can check that off as well. Do we have initiative? Well, interaction requires action. So we also have some kind of need for taking an initiative. So yes, this can also trigger initiative, taking action. Do we have creativity? And in order to put that word up here, I had to check with creativity literature. What is creativity? And I found somebody writing that a common definition. It was Amabile, one of the gurus on creativity. She has written that creativity is often defined as novel ideas that are valuable to someone else. Okay, so we have creating something new, okay, and if it becomes valuable to someone else, then we have been creative. So if it's not valuable to someone else, we have not been creative. That's a bit harsh, isn't it? So let's be careful. And do we have responsibility? Yes, I think so, because if you take responsibility for actually producing something, and you also try to make it valuable to others, to a wider community, I would say that you are taking responsibility. And risk tolerance has also been part of this. And I would say that as soon as you start interacting with other people, you infuse some kind of uncertainty and risk, because you never know what will happen. As soon as you are more than yourself, you don't know where you're going. I certainly don't know what questions you will ask me today. So, yeah. So if you work like this, you will be able to tick off many of the beautiful words that people are talking about when they are talking about entrepreneurship into education. Okay? I have another. Yeah, so what we end up with is something that I have called the altruistic paradox. And that is, we get more motivated by creating value for others than by creating value for ourselves in distant future. So if we can find something that is valuable for someone else in 15 minutes, it makes us more motivated than if somebody tells us, you will have use of this knowledge in 15 years. So creating value for others today is more motivating than creating value for ourselves in a distant future. We are being told to be individualistic, and everybody is the smith of his or her own future. But this is what makes us happy, to do something for other people. And this is what I call learning by creating value. It's an answer to the question, learning by doing what? And it's in line with Vygotsky's whole theoretical framework of learning, that you have externalization and internalization. Learning and value creation goes hand in hand. Certainly Vygotsky didn't see that coming, I guess. Or perhaps he did. He's written so much, so he probably has written something about entrepreneurship too, somewhere. Many people say that Vygotsky was way ahead of his time, and I agree a lot on that. I was certainly surprised to find that my supervisors asked me, what am I doing with these Russian researchers? You know, we don't have only Vygotsky, we have Leonte, we have Galperin, and we have others, and they are asking me, what stuff is this, Martin? But I love it. Okay, I have another framework that is in this action area. Because what is action-based entrepreneurial education, or what is action-based education? When are we doing action education? So I'm using this word artifacts because I think it's pretty useful for us to understand what we are doing. So we can ask ourselves, do the learners get to create artifacts? Yes or no? If the answer to that is no, then we are not doing action-based entrepreneurial education. And that is exactly what I'm doing now. I'm lecturing to you. But you will soon, or after a break and so on, you will do some, create some artifacts too. So we will get to it. But so far, we are not here engaging in action-based education. But if we are creating artifacts, we can ask the next question. Are these artifacts considered to be valuable by stakeholders outside the creators and the teachers? Yes or no? If we say no, I would say that we are in the creation domain. We are creating something. It could be social, cultural, economic. But if we answer yes here, we come into value creation. But then here comes the next question. Are the learners expected to organize the value creation in a venture? Yes or no? If we answer yes to that question, we end up in what I call venture creation. And then we have the last question here. Is it the aim to keep this venture going after the end of the education, if it can be sustained? If you answer yes to that, you have sustainable venture creation. And that is the educational, that is the kind of education that we have at Chalmers, and that was the one that I went through. I started a company through that education, and I can tell you, it's so complex. It's so complicated to have that education sustained every year, and it's so expensive. I don't recommend it. To be clear, okay? For so many people. You need a lot of money, you need a lot of top management support, and you can only do it for a small amount of people. So it's not an approach that works throughout education. I would actually say that this category here, value creation, is the category with the highest potential in relation to how common it is, because it's much less common than it is useful. And many times you end up working with venture creation prematurely. You make it more complex than it has to be in the beginning. I would say that a venture creation course could be a very good second or third step, but we need to find out what is the first and second step. I would not recommend to start with venture creation. Some people would probably disagree, but here are some examples. I mentioned lectures before. Could be guest lectures, group discussions, study visits, literature study. In the creation domain, we can have project work. It's a very common way of working. Role plays, simulations, games. Drama pedagogy with no audience. I would say that's creation. And then we have drama pedagogy again here with audience. Then it's value creation. Actually, I told my wife the other day that I was going to talk here, and I said to her, this is the first time that, I don't know how many of you have chosen actively to come here, but that so many people have come voluntarily to listen to me. So I'm honored. That's the first time. Normally, I'm inserted into a program where people, get certain various kinds of stuff, and I'm one of them. So yeah, this is the first time I have an audience of this kind. So yeah, hope you enjoy the drama. Yes?
Can you explain more?
Venture?
Yes.
A venture could be a new company. It could be a new project in an established organization. You call that corporate. It could say organization creation here also. So venture, new organization, that's some of the words that could be used. Yeah, and I understand that there are a lot of terms here, so I mean more questions of that kind, I really welcome it. If there are words that you don't really understand what I mean, please just let me know, because this I'm this nerdy researcher, so you're yeah, it's not so easy for me to know what words you are familiar with. Yes, And you see the arrow over here. The further down you get here, the further you have increasing learner engagement and motivation, but also you increase the complexity for the teacher. So you have to have a balance between motivation and complexity. That's a tough balance. And that's why you often see that entrepreneurship in education becomes this kind of an island where somebody is very motivated to manage that complexity. But you cannot do it on an organizational scale, because every teacher is not that motivated to manage this complexity. Many teachers are like, people in general. You have a life outside your work. So if you add entrepreneurship into that, suddenly you find yourself having to sit, evenings instead of being with your family and stuff like that. I don't know if some people recognize that. Not everybody is willing to take such a responsibility for managing complexity. That is why we need to bring down the complexity so that everybody can work with this. And that's why we need models. That's why we need theory that people can read and then put into practice. We cannot rely on people's willingness to manage this complexity every day. That will not be a sustainable model. Yes, a common way to work in this domain here is, of course, young enterprise. In Swedish, that's ung företagsamhet. Yes. Let's look at the tools that seem to work. Here are some of the tools that have come the last decade or so, give or take 5-10 years. Effectuation, customer development, lean startup, business model canvas, appreciative inquiry. And here you see the people. These are world famous people. If you search their names on Google, you will get probably millions of hits. And if you search each and every one of these terms, you will find so much material. I will just give you a brief overview of this. But each of these is a whole world in itself. And I recommend it. It's really interesting. Let's start with effectuation. Saraswati from India discovered something that I must say it's a surprise that it wasn't discovered until 2001, but okay. Maybe we are not so smart that we think, us humans. Most people thought that expert entrepreneurs put up a very clear goal, and then they went to find the means they needed to reach that goal. That's how people thought entrepreneurs did. And she studied entrepreneurs, expert entrepreneurs, to see how did they do. And she found out that it was the opposite. They started with what they had, the means that they had access to. And then they saw, what can I do with this? What goal can I reach with the means I have on my hand? And this she called effectuation. What could be the effect of my resources? And she put that against causation. For what cause am I doing this? Yes?
Because I always thought that I would like to do something, that I had these means inside of me, and I want to reach something, and I had difficulties finding my goal. But now I understand what I am doing in my life and what I'm thinking about. I actually reach different goals all the time, and I'm not a failure. I'm actually a good entrepreneur.
You are being entrepreneurial.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. The example she used to explain this came from the food domain at home, from the kitchen. Can you guess what example she gave to try to explain this? Sorry? Ah, yeah, you're on the right track. Exactly. You open the fridge and you see what's in it and you cook something out of that. Instead of following a recipe, going to the store, grocery store and buy what you need to do that recipe. Exactly that example she used. So this is such a simple idea. So imagine it took until 2001 to to realize this. It's really strange. And this has revolutionized the entire research domain on entrepreneurship. Everybody is relating to effectuation. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people. And here are some differences that she pointed out. You start with goals, or you start with given means. You focus on expected returns, or you focus on affordable loss. You focus on competition, or you focus on cooperation. You try to control, you try to predict through control, but here you try to control, and then you reduce the need to predict. You don't have to predict if you just go and see what happens. This is good for existing markets, and this is good for new kinds of market. This is a linear model, and here we have a cyclical model. Some simple differences. And she put out 5 principles of effectuation. Bird in hand principle, affordable loss principle, crazy kilt principle, lemonade principle, and pilot in the plane principle. I will not go through them here, but if you search on the internet for this, there are videos, there are explanations. It's really interesting. So, how does an effectuation cycle look like? You start with the means available, and then you ask yourselves questions. Who am I? What do I know? Who do I know? And then you look at actual courses of action possible. What can I do with what I know, who I am, and what I have? And then you start interacting with other people. Here, you see, here we start seeing the interaction with the outside world. So effectuation can be a very practical tool for sending students and pupils out in the world interacting. What can I do with what I have here, with the knowledge I have, or with the skills I have, or the attitudes? Some of these people you start interacting with give you some kind of a commitment. And this commitment, you turn it into new means and new goals. And then you get an expanding cycle of resources, because you can ask yourself again, who am I now? What do I now know? Who do I now know? And then you go through it all again. What can I now do? Who can I interact with now? What kind of stakeholder commitment do I get this time? And then you also get new goals. And the goals are constraining. You are gradually finding what you are actually aiming for. And then you have your new markets, new products, and new firms. So this is a model anchored in business, but it can be used in any domain of life and activity. Hans? Yeah, I've seen him on Twitter, yes? Yeah? Yeah, double loop learning, yeah. I've heard about that, yeah. Sorry? Yeah, I mean, that's one of the more entrepreneurial places in Sweden when it comes to education, yeah. Absolutely. Customer development, lean startup are 2 other concepts that have spread around the world in no time. And they are based on a different way of thinking. Instead of thinking about product development, where you make a concept, you make a plan, you develop the product, you have a testing, and then you launch it to the first customer over here. As the last step, you start interacting with the customer. Instead, they say, let's discover the customer first and validate if we are doing something that they value. And then we create the customer, and then the last step is to build a company around it. You see the difference? You start with the value creation, and you end up with the organization creation. And they say there are no facts inside the building. You need to get out of the building. That is what they are preaching. So you can use that in education as well. But maybe you shouldn't say there are no facts here. But, you know, you can at least say get out of the building, because there are so much interesting stuff going on outside the building. There are some good things here as well in the building, but, let's go outside as well. business model canvas is it's a checklist, you know. Imagine that a checklist becomes like a virus spreading all over the world. What does that say about us people? But okay, this checklist is about what needs to be in place in order for value to transfer. You need some kind of a value proposition. What does the package look like? What is it we are proposing? What kind of value are we offering to someone else? Who is this someone else? Who is the customer? How do we get a relationship to this customer? Through what channels do we reach this recipient of the value created? And what revenue does that result in? On the left-hand side, we have key activities. What are we doing? Who are our partners? What are our key resources? And what costs does that lead to when we are trying to deliver this value? It's such an easy checklist, but it's very valuable when you start sketching on something. You want to do something valuable, you can sketch it down. And this is an Austrian guy, Alexander Osterwalder. He has written a book, Business Model Generation. He has also written a book that's called Business Model U. So you can apply this on yourself. What am I offering to the world? Who am I interacting with? How am I interacting with them? What kind of value? How do I get paid for interacting with the world? Because I have to pay for food and other things, just like everyone else. So what is my value proposition to the world? So this can be applied to on a wide definition of entrepreneurship as well. But sometimes maybe you need to wash away some of these. You know, instead of customers, maybe you could call it something else that's not so business oriented. I don't know. Here's an example of the business model of a Swedish company, formerly Swedish, they are offering. Here is what the customers they are aiming at. Here is how they get a relation to them. Here's the channels. Here is how they get money for what they are doing, and so on. It's a very simple checklist tool. Now they started. This is the same thing, but for Facebook. What is their value proposition? 600 million users. Maybe there are more than that now. And here are their customer segments, customer relationship, channels, resources, activities, and partners, and so on. And how they generate revenue from that. Here it's applied to a community leadership summit. I mean, we could do this for our gathering today. What value is created here today? Who are you? What are the key resources I'm using, and so on. So this can be applicable to many situations. The last one here is appreciative inquiry. I think it's a really interesting perspective. And it's certainly related to entrepreneurial things. Because it's a strength-based view. The basic assumption is that in every organization, there are things that work well. And let's find our strengths and expand them, instead of focusing what doesn't work well. You know, the usual way to work is let's fix what's wrong and let the strengths take care of themselves. That's the usual way that we people, humans, work. We normally focus on what's not working. It's, you know, we get all kinds of warning lights and we have to focus on this because something is not working here. So this way of thinking is counterintuitive, and it's called appreciative inquiry. We want to appreciate when we inquire about things, how they are. It can be used for learning from previous experiences. It can be used in involvement of an entire organization when you change something. It can be used to motivate people. This is a feel-good method, I would say. I've done many workshops using this format, and everybody is so happy afterwards. You know, it's amazing. It's like a pill that everybody can take, but almost nobody takes it. And why is that? Because we get so happy and creative when we focus on what is actually working well. Just asking a question. The first question you ask is, when in the past have we done something really good? And then they start talking about that. And then we say, okay, how can we get more of that in the future? So you start inquiring in the past, and you try to turn that into a better future. It's amazing. And it's simple, and it can be applied in education as well. There are some books here that are a good starting point. I have a little comic here. This is the opposite. Here's the project manager. I'd like to kick off the project by assigning blame for its eventual failure. Shouldn't we do that after the project is over? I see no reason to wait. Yeah. Maybe that doesn't happen really often, but sometimes you feel that there is already a search for what will go wrong in early stages. Okay. Now we are 10:25. Should we take a model now? Or no, let's take some discussion instead, and then I take the models after the break. So, reflections, thoughts, ideas, questions? Do you think you can use these tools? In one way or another? Yes? How?
What does the children find meaningful, and what would they like to go deeper into, and what would they like to present to other persons? And I think what I've been writing down is that I need to find what groups do I want to focus on for my class, to who can they exchange knowledge with, and who can they turn to. So that's what's going on in my head. And I'm also thinking about I have kids in my class that don't really have anything that they know that they like, and how can I find the ways into them so that they can find out what they want to learn more about, or what's interesting to them.
Yeah, good. Any more reflections, thoughts? You really want coffee, don't you?
Yes.
Shouldn't we just take a break then?
We do that, and we have coffee, tea, sandwiches, and some fruit. And I want you all to bring your coffee, tea, and then go outside, because it's lovely weather. It's Spanish weather in Sweden today. And we meet in half an hour, Martin, or?
Yes.
Yes, in half an hour.
Yeah, 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Yes.
Jo, men jag jobbar med trevligt att ses. Jag fixar det. Jag är på PG. Jo, jag är på PG. Ja, men jag är på PG. Men vi är ju vårt lilla projekt.
Allmän skoldag så kan ni mäta LTA-delen. Så kan vi se.
Ja, nu får det bli lite kaffe, va? Jag är lite utmattad.
Sen kan jag komma tillbaka till 30% och vara med eftermiddag.
Jag tänkte Johan har en ansökan. Jag ska också ta dem för ja, kan 11. Vi ses. Ja.
grabbar.
Eftersom de är ganska informationstunga. Vad sa du? Ja, jag vet. Precis va. Så att det kanske vi kunde göra på något sätt. Som ni kan få in då. För då blir det ju... När ni nu lägger så här mycket tid på det så känns det som att då vill man ju få det bra, tänker jag. Ja. Men nu funkar det eller? Det funkar fortfarande inte. Jaha, och det funkar inte heller? Men ni får dem i efterhand? Ja, jag kan mejla dem till er. Det känns väldigt roligt att man kan få det här att bli bra på nätet, för jag tror att det är första gången det görs. Ja, men så är det ibland. Jag har jobbat mycket med teknik. Det blir aldrig som man tänkt sig. Ja, så är det. Ja, visst, precis. Ja, visst, precis. Och sen händer det grejer, precis. Ja, vad bra. Tack. Ja, nej, det är komplicerade. Jag har haft band. Så jag, ja.
Väldigt intressant.
Ja, visst. Jag har ju varit företagare, det är därför som jag kan sätta fingret på detta. Det är en anledning, tror jag. Isn't this a Spanish? Kanske skulle bli bättre med det. Ja, jag tror det. Två smala var det.
Okay. Shall we continue? Are you ready for some models and a platform? And I'm going to talk for another half hour, and then we are going to do a workshop together. So let's continue. And I added a picture here as well, based on the discussion. That will come last. So there is some need for supporting models in this area, because there is very little practical help when it comes to how to do this. So I'd like to go through a couple of models that I think are interesting here. First, it's an action-based instructional model inspired by Vygotsky that I will show you. It's developed by a researcher called Galperin. And then I will show you a progression model. How can we think about entrepreneurship from early stages all the way to the late stages in education? What is common? What is not common? When do you introduce what? And then I have a value creation model for interaction with the outside world that can help us in designing the organizational aspects of making education more connected to the outside world. And then I have a pedagogical platform that I discussed before that we've done together with Drivhuset. I will just show it to you so you get an idea of how that works. Then I added a last picture here, and that is the question of why do we have entrepreneurship in education? Maybe I should have started with that, but at least I take it in the end. Okay. So, there's a lot of text here, but okay. So this is a 6-stage model that is developed by a researcher called Piotr Galperin. And it can be used, I tried to simplify it a little bit down here. It can be used as a template for what you do in what order when you do learning by doing. So basically what this model says is that first you have step 1 and 2, where you try to describe what will you do, why will you do it, how does it all work, and why do we want to work this way. And what Galperin says is that the Piaget model of building, it with small steps and only in the end tell students or pupils how it all works, that is not a very good model, Galperin says. Young people or any people that are trying to learn something can actually be helped by seeing the big picture. They don't have to understand every single piece of it, but it will help them to have the map. It's like you have a map of the city. That doesn't mean that you learn all the streets, but you have a map. You know the big picture of everything. So that is he calls it a sheet schema. outlining a complete framework for the actions to be learned. That's the first and second step in this model. The third step is the material stage. Here you start taking action. Here you start learning by doing, in actual practice or through simulation. And then, when you've done that, you come to the fourth step, overt speech, they call it. Now, it's about talking about what you did, because you learn from that too, telling others what you did. You go out and learn by doing, and then you come back to the classroom and you let the students or the pupils tell each other what they did and what they learned from it. And that is a way of linking action with thought. And that is facilitating the theorizing and generalizing of what they have been doing. So that's step number 4. And I would say that you could do a lot of iteration here between step 3 and 4 to learn by doing and then go back and they tell each other what they have been doing, and then they go out and learn by doing again, and so on. And then you have step 5 and 6, where you have the reflection. And maybe the last step would be to hand in a written report, where you are really reflecting on what you have done, and that might be the last step. And when I saw this model, I thought, I mean, this might seem, you know, pretty obvious to some, but actually, I had the presentation as the last step in my module that I'm doing, and they had to hand in a report before they were supposed to present it. And that's backwards, because then they will not be able to include all the reflections that they get from listening to others, what others have done, what others have learned. So according to this model, you first present and then you write the reflection on what you have been doing and learning from that. That increases the level of reflection you get from the doing. So I think we can be inspired by Galperin and the other researchers that have gone in the footsteps of Vygotsky. And there's a lot of similarities between what they are saying and doing in their research and what I'm seeing in the domain of entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial education. They never mention the word entrepreneurship in any of their work. But it's really useful for in introducing entrepreneurship. And then the last step here is when this doing is transferred or it ends up with a cognitive tool being kept in mind. And that's a typical Vygotskian way of saying it, that we have cognitive tools that we use with whatever we do. But getting those tools to become internalized requires action. So this is the last step. Yes? Reflections on this? Is this useful, or is it more like, yeah, that's how we always do, so what's the news here? That's what somebody told me, but this is how I work already, so I mean, this is nothing new to me. And maybe you have the same feeling, or maybe you have, this is, can contribute to something. Yes?
I think this is the way you do it in the university when you are
doing the bachelor thesis.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you've been doing your education for 15 to 17 years, you do it as the last step.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? I agree.
Yes, yes.
I completely agree. I like the way the thesis, the last part of an education, is done. Because then you interact with the outside world and you do it, and then you end up writing down what you have learned from it. It's good. What I don't think is good is that it's the last step. I think it should be at least, yeah, every year you should do something like that, or maybe even every month. but I don't know if it's practically feasible. But yeah, so this is done, but we could do more of it. And one way that I have adjusted to this model is to have a theoretical introduction, and then I have a month, even 3 months, waiting. They get to do a lot of action, and I have done very, very specific instructions on what I expect from them, but they could go and talk to whoever they want and discuss whatever they want, and then they come back and they tell me and the rest of the class what they have been doing and what they have learned from that, and then they get a couple of more weeks to write it up with some kind of a report. And Galperin helped me there. Okay. This is another complex model with a lot of text, so I'll try to walk you through it. This is an attempt to make a progression model. There are some generic fundamentals that are common to all stages. And then there is an early stage, or you could say first step. You have a second step or mid stage, and you have a late stage, last step, you could say, or third step. This could be interpreted as primary, secondary, and higher education by some, but I don't really want to say that is it, because it could look different in different settings, and so I don't want to write that here. So there are some fundamentals over here. When working with entrepreneurship or an entrepreneurial approach to education, I think, and the reason, the research we have been doing at Chalmers points to that we should strive for a team-based approach. We should strive for value creation being part of it. However we do it, there should be a component of value creation in it. It should be connected to outside school or university. We can see that as well. I will show you in the afternoon some of the evidence for that. And we should let learners take action. But it should be theory informed. There are theories about how to take action. They have not been in existence for so long, but they are now here and we can use them. So it should not be whatever action, it should be theory-based action or framework-based action. And then in the early stage, there is an embedded model. So you embed the entrepreneurial aspects into the content that you have in all in other subjects. I don't say all, but in other subjects where it's possible to integrate it. And you integrate it through value creation attempts, where learners get to address societal problems and everyday problems. And it should be child-centered. They should choose which problems they want to address. And you should actually hide theory in this stage, I would say. The teacher has to be well aware and connected with the theory, but the learners at this stage, I don't think they need to know why they are doing effectuation. You don't have to let people in this stage read Sarasvati and other things. It's only the teacher that needs to know this at this stage. Then you get into some kind of a divide. Either you go the separate approach, where it's about preparing for becoming an entrepreneur. That is the minority. Well, that should be the minority of approaches in education. Today, I would say it's the majority. In the future, I would like to see that the majority is the embedded version, also in the mid and late stages. In the mid stage, you can act on curriculum knowledge. That's the question I talked about before. For whom is this knowledge valuable today? Here you can start, you can do that in the early stage as well, but here you can definitely integrate the curriculum knowledge. And you can actually create value, not only attempts. Sometimes there will be value. In a higher number of occasions, perhaps there will actually be value created here. But this is also okay, because it doesn't have to become valuable in order to learn from it. Just attempting to create value leads to learning. And maybe you learn the most from the failed attempts to create value. And then we have the late stages. Here you can start making the theory explicit. And over here, up here we have venture creation, and then we have sustainable venture creation. Down here we have value creation, and here we have skill-based value creation, where you actually practice the skills that are now more and more becoming something that could be valuable to a labor market, which would be possible to reach in the late stages. So here it's educating through entrepreneurship, and this is also educating through entrepreneurship. Up here it's more educating about entrepreneurship and through, and here it's educating about, for, and through entrepreneurship. And here people become entrepreneurial, and here they become entrepreneurs. I mean, my supervisor told me yesterday that entrepreneurs are also entrepreneurial, so I need to do some changes to this, but okay. And down here you see the outcomes. This spurs creativity, it spurs uncertainty, engagement, self-efficacy, but it also spurs failures, which in turn can lead to increased perseverance. And in the late stages you will reach also the passion and identity. Here you will actually get growth, and here you will get real startups. And that is the last step. So, and the business language is not added until here. And it's only, you only need to add it for this line of working. Maybe you add some of it here, but that's not the main point. Is this helpful? Okay. Okay, let's take another one then. This is business model canvas, but for the educational situation. So here we have the value proposition that I was talking about before. Here we have the key activities and the key resources. Here we have the key partners and the economy, and here we have the customer and so on. So this is what business model canvas becomes when you apply it to education. On the left side you had what we normally call education. On the right side you have the outside world, and the thing connecting this is an offer. So in order to interact with the outside world in a way that will foster learning, then you need to have some kind of a value proposition. And that you can ask the pupils or students to produce that kind of value proposition. They will be really motivated to try to produce that. When we do this at Chalmers, at our master program, we actually have an organizational form that facilitates this interaction with the outside world. So what we have done is that the teachers, they work on the left side here. We work at Chalmers School of Entrepreneurship. On the right side, we have a fully owned subsidiary of Chalmers, which is called Incubator. It's a company with a CEO with about 4 or 5 employees, managing all the complexity of interaction with the outside world. You could call it innovation logistics, because when you start interaction with the outside world, there is a lot of complexity added here, and I, as a teacher, would never be able to manage all of those things by myself. My life as a teacher would be very, very difficult, and I would stop interacting with the outside world. I would stop asking my students to interact with the outside world. So what we need is somebody taking care and helping the teachers in facilitating the interaction with the outside world. So this is an organizational way of looking at this. I would say that this kind of organizational structure might not be in place in most places. There is a role that I would say is the most, that comes the most close. And what do you think that is? I only know the Swedish word. I heard it. Somebody said syo. Yes. What's that in English, anyone? Sorry? Study guardians? Yeah. Counseling? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, and one, yeah. Yeah. Mm.
This door opener they are.
No.
They have the chance, but they don't use it.
They don't take it.
30% maybe when it's good.
Mm.
But it could be 100.
Yeah, yeah.
And they could have all doors open to the outside.
Yeah. So maybe this model can help to explain how you could work and what would be the role of the teacher, what would be the role of the facilitator in managing this value creation process of interacting with the outside world. Good. But you're not using it this way yet. Good. Yeah. Some of the problems that come up when you do this, that I hear people talk about is these things here. I mean, here we have the measurement challenge. We have a value split that is sometimes not so good, well done, that the students feel exploited by the outside world. You don't want that to happen. Sometimes the outside world doesn't have time and cannot prioritize to interact with the educational institution. That's not so uncommon. Sometimes the value created is not interesting enough. That could be a problem. So this is not just easy. There are some challenges here that we need to address in order to get this to work. Sometimes learners act, but they don't reflect upon their actions, and this prevents deep learning, and it also lowers motivation. Sometimes teachers don't have competencies in value creation. Sometimes the teamwork process is not managed in a good way, which is often due to resource constraints and lack of experience in value creation. Yes?
I just have a question for you. Because I'm curious, what school do you represent?
They are very important in the developing.
But then it's in the adult learning phase.
Yeah.
So what you said, it's
Gothenburg City.
But so for the young people or the young children, you don't have
in high
that
school.
kind of.
In high school, Gothenburg City, they have coaching too. They have.
Yeah, but I mean for like 7-year-olds.
But you can have too. If it's a decision, it's a political decision.
Of course, but I wonder, do you feel the same that the other schools here? Do you have that kind of organization like Incubator?
So start now.
It's a perspective. It's not just a coach. It's a way of thinking.
It's a way of working.
Okay, we have to go on. I just had a final. Yeah, this was the platform. So this is a platform that we have constructed together with this foundation, and it's an action-based teaching platform. And we have used the theory and methods that I've talked about today, and built them into a platform. And it contains 5 workshops with material and so on, where you go through the phases: idea, customer, proposition, value, position. And the core idea is to let the learners pitch an idea to people in real life. And I got the question here last time: what is a pitch? Yes? Or to present an idea in a very short time. Yeah, you have 30 seconds. And you meet a very influential person, and you have 30 seconds to tell that person why this is a good idea. Then you do a pitch. So this is very central and you see, so we have built in this presenting to others perspective into the education or the pedagogical platform. They do this between the workshops, between the 5 workshops. They go out in real life and test their ideas or concepts on real people. And they can choose whoever they want to test this on. And then they develop hypotheses into facts. And most of the time it's very surprising. They get surprised all the time. They make an assumption that this is something that people would think is interesting, and they go out and test it, and they come back, and they realize that was not at all what they wanted. But they wanted something else, which I actually can deliver. So this is really interesting. And then they go on doing this. And we do it for about 2 months, and it's a very interesting journey. There is a book that is being written by 2 people working at this foundation. It's in Swedish, unfortunately, for you. But it summarizes many of these tools. It will be out in June, so next month you can buy it on. I think you can find it on Bokus. It's called LOOPA, L-O-O-P-A, and that is what they call it. When you go out and test your ideas, you call it to make a loop out in the outside world. Yeah. So this is I think this is a very practical book. If you buy this book, you will probably be able to take certain bits and pieces from that book and apply in other contexts.
Martin, is the platform in English?
No, it's not.
Will it be?
Well, there are some slides in English, but I don't think that. I don't know. They probably won't, but this is early work.
And for the rest of us, the Swedish guys, will it cost anything to use it?
Well, you have to buy the book, I guess.
Okay. Good.
Okay. I was just going to finish off this with a picture. Why should we have entrepreneurship in education? And this is a lot of text. This is part of the report I'm doing for OECD. What you can see here is that 3 out of the 5 reasons here is about financial economic issues. Job creation, economic success, globalization, innovation, and renewal. That's the usual talk around entrepreneurship in education. It's about economy, we have to be more entrepreneurial, and so on. Then there are 2 things down here: joy, engagement, creativity, and societal challenges. I would say that these 2 are much more productive ways to introduce entrepreneurship into education. I would advise people to not talk about the economic and financial aspects of entrepreneurship. And if there is one single square I would like to emphasize here, could you guess which one that is? Yeah, and which of the joy? For the individual? Happiness. Well, sorry, it's this one. I would say that this is the most interesting effect of introducing entrepreneurship into education. And why do I think that? Well, because there is so much struggle with getting young people motivated in schools today. And we are really struggling with this. And entrepreneurship can be a really good way to get these people more motivated. And that will lead to better learning, more people more of these students and pupils will learn much better. And if some of those go on and create jobs and economic success, that's fine. But that's a by effect. That's a side effect that I don't think it's so productive to talk about. Almost not at all. We can do this just because it's so damn fun. And that's enough, because what is fun leads to better learning. And education is about learning, primarily. So, yeah. And now we're going to do some fun ourselves. Yeah. Now we're going to do some workshopping and try some tools together. Let me just introduce them to you first, and I will hand out a lot of papers and stuff. First, we are going to do an opportunity map. Each one of you is going to write down on post-its and put on this what you are passionate about, what you can, what you know, what you have access to, what experiences you have, what contacts you have. And this is effectuation. You remember Saraswati? Who am I? What do I know? Who do I know? Now you are going to do this yourselves, in groups. But the first part will be an individual part, where I want it to be completely silent in the room. You are going to turn this into this. We only have one color, but that we will be fine. So each group, you will work in groups, and then all the people's passion, abilities, resources, experience, and contacts will end up on this same opportunity map. That's the first step. And you will get around 10 minutes to do this. The second step is to turn all of these things into an idea of something that could be valuable to someone else, into some kind of a value proposition. And I encourage you to try to take things from many people in the group, so that you draw on all the experiences and passions that you have in each group. I would like to see that. So the next step is to look at this mapping of opportunities and brainstorm around possible value propositions. And then when you've done that for about 10 minutes, you will have to make a choice, and the last 5 minutes you develop and you answer these questions, some of them, all if you have time, but some of the questions you answer in order to develop your idea of a value proposition. This is the second step. Okay? The third step is the pitch. Then you will get about 10 minutes to choose 1 or 2 people that will do the pitch in front of all of us present here. You will get a microphone and you will do the pitch. Do you know what a hook is? Who can explain what a hook is? Yes, we have someone here. Yeah, Daniela. Capture the attention, the interest, yeah. You send out a hook to get the people to listen to you. Exactly. And then you explain the need, you explain your approach, you talk about the benefits of your approach, you talk about the alternative solutions to this problem or need, and then you close, and I want a clear offer, and I want to know what will happen afterwards. What can I do if I think this is interesting? Okay? And when we've all done this, each group will get 1 minute each to present. So I give you the double time. You will not get 30 seconds, you get 60 seconds. I'm being really nice to you today. Okay, so could we work as we sit? And I would like to have about between 4 and 6 people in each group. Good luck.